today, or rather this morning, I'm going to be talking about the second verse of Āṉma-Viddai. As I explained last time, the Pallavi, the refrain for this, was written by Muruganar, and every verse ends with the Pallavi. So in the Pallavi, Muruganar made a contention. That is, aiyē ati sulapum, Āṉma-Viddai, aiyē ati sulapum. That means are extremely easy, Ātma-Vidya are extremely easy, in which Āṉma-Viddai is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit term Ātma-Vidya, which means self-knowledge or the science of self. So we can take it as the science of self-knowledge. So this is the basic contention of the song, and every verse that Bhagavan wrote is to support that contention. But verses 1 and 2 really have to be read together to get the... in verses 1 and 2, Bhagavan makes an argument which is complete only by considering both of them together. So I'll just quickly go through the meaning of the first verse in order to provide the connection with this second verse. Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the first verse, though oneself is incessantly and indubitably or imperishably exists as real, the body and world, which are unreal, sprout and arise as if real. The implication of this sentence is that though we're always aware of ourselves, because of the appearance of the body and world, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. That is the implication of this sentence. The second sentence, he says, when thought which is composed of unreal darkness, that means the darkness of self-ignorance and desire, is dissolved in such a manner that it does not revive even an iota, in the heart space, which alone is real, oneself, who is the sun of pure awareness, will shine spontaneously. The connection between these two sentences is not explicit, but it's implicit, because according to Bhagavan, body and world are nothing but thoughts. That is, thoughts are the seeds that manifest as body and world. So that is why there's a jump from the subject of body and world to thought. It seems to be a jump, but there's actually a logical connection if we consider other teachings of Bhagavan, where he says that the world is nothing but thought. It's nothing but, just like in dream, the world we see is just a mental fabrication. According to Bhagavan, waking is no different to dream. This world we see is just a mental fabrication, and therefore just a thought. So when thought is dissolved in such a manner, so the body and world, when body and world appear, we're not aware of ourselves as we actually are. The seed from which the body and world sprouts is thought. So when thought ceases in such a manner that it does not revive even an iota, then the pure self-awareness will shine forth. Now, we are always aware of ourselves. There's never a moment when we're not aware I am. We're aware of our own existence as I am, not only in waking and dream, but also in sleep. But in waking and dream, we're not aware of ourselves just as I am. We're aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person. So though we're aware that we are, we're not aware exactly what we are. So though we are always clearly aware of ourselves, we're not aware of ourselves as we actually are. The obstacle is the appearance of body and world, which are nothing but thoughts. So when thought is dissolved in such a manner that it doesn't ever revive, then the pure self-awareness, now self-awareness is impure. It's mixed along with, well, the self-awareness that we as ego experience is impure, because instead of being aware of ourselves just as I am, we're aware of ourselves as I am this or I am that. I am this body. So when thought is removed completely, then the pure self-awareness shines forth. That is the main argument in the first verse. But this the conclusion of this argument is, therefore, what Murugan sang in the refrain, therefore, are extremely easy, Āṇma-Viddai are extremely easy. So, but this argument isn't quite complete, because the argument here is, in order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, all we need to do is to dissolve all thoughts. Therefore, it's very easy. But how to dissolve all thoughts is not explained here. That is what Bhagavan explains in the second verse. Again, leading up to it, so this is the second part of the same argument, leading to the conclusion that that Āṇma-Viddai, the science of self-knowledge, is extremely easy. This verse consists of just two sentences. The first one is a long sentence, so I'll take it clause by clause. In the first clause, Bhagavan says, ruḍaliduvē nāṇām ennum ṉiṇaivugaḻsē ṉiṇaivugaḷpōy. That means, since the thought, the body composed of flesh, itself is I, alone is the one thread on which all the various thoughts are strung. So here Bhagavan is giving the clue. In order to get rid of all thoughts, we need to get rid of the root of all thoughts. Or as Bhagavan, often Bhagavan calls it the root of all thoughts. Here he expresses it the same thing in a slightly different way by saying it's the one thread on which all the various thoughts are strung. If you've got a necklace of beads, of semi-precious stones or precious stones or whatever, if you want to destroy the necklace, all you have to do is cut the string and the beads are all scattered. And then you have no more necklace. That's why Bhagavan uses this, or there's an implied analogy here. Bhagavan is comparing the thought, I am this body, to the string on which beads are strung to form a necklace. Cut the string, the necklace is scattered, there's no longer a necklace. So in order to get rid of all thoughts, we don't have to worry about any other thoughts. There's only one thought we need to get rid of, because by getting rid of that, we get rid of all thoughts. That is ego. The ego is what Bhagavan calls here, ruḍaliduvē nāṇām ennum niṇaivugaļsē. That is the thought called this body, the body composed of flesh alone is I. Bhagavan often said, ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this body, or as he often put it, the thought, I am this body. That is, whenever we rise and stand as ego, we're always aware of ourselves as a body. In verse 5 of Ulladu, Bhagavan clarifies that what he means by body is not just the physical body, it's all the five sheaths. The five sheaths means the physical body, the life that animates the body, the mind that's functioning in the body, the intellect that's guiding the mind, and the will that is driving all of them. So these five are what are called five sheaths. Body, life, mind, intellect, and will.
Excuse me, could you go through the five sheets, please? Because you said the physical body, life, some of them
mind,
intellect, and will.
Yes.
Can you kind of distinguish between life, mind, intellect, and will?
We experience them all as I, but they are different. When we are aware of ourselves as this body, we're never aware of ourselves as a dead body. We're always aware of ourselves as a living body. So body and life go together. But we're also not aware of ourselves as a mindless body. When the mind subsides, we're not aware of any body. So there's a mind. Mind, in this context, mind means the thinking, perceiving, memory, thought, perception, all these are included in what is called manomaya kosha. That's the sheath composed of mind. In this context, that is distinguished from that is the intellect. The intellect is that part of the mind, that, or that aspect of the mind that distinguishes one thing from another, that forms judgments. This is right, this is wrong, this is true, this is false. This is real, this is unreal. That judging, discriminating, distinguishing function is called intellect. So in this context, that is distinguished from mind as the thinking, remembering, the more functional aspect. This is the discriminating aspect, is the intellect. But all of these are guided by will. Will is all our desires, attachments, likes, dislikes, hopes, fears, all, I mean, everything, all forms the will. And the will is said to compose of seeds, which are called vasanas. Vasanas are just all these passions, this likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, and so on, in seed form are called vasanas. So that is the will. And the will is also called karana sarira, which means the causal body, because it is that the vasanas are the seeds that sprout as thoughts, that appear as all this, the other four sheaths and the world. So that is the cause. But none of these are all sheaths, they're all coverings. What they are covering is ego. It is ego is not any of these five sheaths. Ego is that which is aware of all these five sheaths collectively as I. So when Bhagavan says, ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this body, he means ego is that which is always aware of itself as I am this body, collectively meaning all these five sheaths. But in this verse, he said it slightly differently. He refers to a body as ūṇā-udal. Ūṇā-udal means the body composed of flesh. So he's referring particularly to he's referring explicitly to the physical body. But though he's referring explicitly to the physical body, implicitly he's also referring to the other four sheaths, because we never experience, we don't experience a dead body as ourselves, as I said. It's always a living body. So these five sheaths are a single package. We never experience ourselves as any one of these sheaths without experiencing all five of them. So the whole package is ourself. Generally we think of ourselves, I'm this body, yes, but I'm also mind, so body is part of myself, life in the body is part of myself, I'm partly body, partly mind, partly life, partly mind, partly intellect, partly will. These actually, we can distinguish these things, but we experience them all as one thing. For example, we say, I was walking and thinking about what I should say. The same I is walking, the same I is thinking, and the same I is thinking what I should say. So that is the function. Walking is an action of the body. Thinking is an action of the mind. Saying is an action of the speech, which is a sort of combination of body and mind. So we take the whole thing as I. So though we can distinguish, but there is obviously, the body is physical, mind is mental. But in our experience, they all are bundled together as ourself.
Will is the causal body?
Sorry?
You said will is causal body?
Will is the causal body, yes.
Which was the second? Light, was it light?
Life, prana.
Life.
L-I-F-E.
Yes. Prana. Why do you call it life then?
Prana is sometimes translated as breath, but breath is just one. I mean, prana can be explained in different ways, but all the metabolic functions in the body, not only the breathing, but the heartbeat and the whole metabolism.
Which one is the Anandamaya kosha?
Anandamaya kosha is the will. The last one, yes.
Anandamaya kosha is the will?
The will, yes.
But why?
Chittam.
Causal body
And causal body, yes.
is annamaya kosha.
Annamaya kosha, yes. Sorry, did you say Annamaya or Anandamaya? Anandamaya. And Annamaya kosha is the physical body. That's the body composed of food. The Anandamaya kosha is the, sorry, I'm mixing myself up. The Anandamaya kosha, that is the sheath composed of happiness. Because Bhagavan says in the first paragraph of ṉāṉā, happiness alone is the cause of love. We love whatever makes us happy. So happiness and love are inseparable. So the will, the ichcha aspect of ourself is called the Anandamaya kosha. That is the causal body. Because it's because of our will, because of the vasanas which make up the causal body, but all this sprouts from those vasanas. But whose vasanas are they? Whose will is it? It's ego's will. So ego is distinct even from the will. Ego is distinct from all the five sheaves. Ego is that which is aware of the five sheaves as I.
In five koshas, where does will come? Well, ego come. In the five koshas.
It's not any. It is that which is aware of all the five koshas as I.
That's outside the five koshas.
Sorry?
That's outside the five koshas.
Metaphorically speaking, it's inside the five koshas. It is that which has covered itself with the five koshas, taking them to be I. In verse 25 of Uludunapadu, Bhagavan refers to ego as uruvachapeyahande. That means a formless phantom ego. And he says, urupatriyondam, grasping form, it rises. Urupatri nikum, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mikaongam, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. So ego is not, these five sheaves are all forms of different degrees of subtlety. Ego is not any of these, but it's that which takes all of these as I.
But surely it is all of them, because I mean, ego can't be the witness, because the witness is already one step removed.
No, ego is the witness, but the witness is always identifying itself with...
Well, so where is the witness of the ego? Then there's another witness.
There is no witness of these. Metaphorically speaking, sometimes our real nature is described as witness. But Bhagavan said, when ego is described as witness, it means ego is the perceiver. When Brahman or our real nature is called the witness, it doesn't mean that it is the perceiver of ego, but that in the presence of which ego appears.
I thought the ego arises in the meṇuninaivē kosha or in
No. This is
modification of the I. It is modification of the Atman or I.
Yes.
Aham gets modified.
Yes. Well, you can say ego. I mean, in ṉāṉā, in one paragraph, Bhagavan says that which rises as I in the body is mind. In that context, he's using mind in the sense of ego. So the ego is that which rises in the five koshas, we can say, but that the five koshas don't exist independent of ego, because in the next verse of Uludunapadu, verse 26, Bhagavan says, Ahande undayan anetum undahum. If ego rises, everything rises. Ahande indrail, indra anetum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. So these five sheaves don't exist independent of ego. The nature of ego, it rises, projects the five sheaves, I experience them as I, and through the five senses of the body, it then projects the world. So ego is the ultimate cause of everything. This is implicit in a lot of the old Advaitic texts, but Bhagavan, what is implicit there, Bhagavan has made explicit in a very clear and simple manner. So a lot of the potential confusion but can arise from ancient texts, Bhagavan has clarified it by simplifying it and boiling it all down to the root of everything is ego. Ego is, in one place he calls it one of the link words, when Bhagavan extended Uludunapadu by linking the word verses together to make one verse, before verse 26, the link words he added, the link 25 to 26 was karuvam. Karu is a Tamil word derived from the Sanskrit word garbha, which means the womb or the seed. So he, by using that term karuvam, the ego, which is the karu, the garbha, the seed, the womb, he's implying ego is the cause of everything. That's why he said, when ego arises, everything arises. When ego doesn't exist, nothing exists. So ego is distinct. It's very important to distinguish ego from the five sheaths, because the five sheaths together are body. Collectively they form the body. But we need to. I am not this body. So I am not this physical body. I'm not the prana. I'm not the. I mean, that's the usual neti analysis. I'm not this mind. I'm not the intellect. I'm not the will. I'm that which is aware of all these things. I am the subject. They are all objects. So
you said that but you just said that the ego is the witness. So it's not logical what you're saying.
Right.
You said before that ego is the witness of the five.
It is the witness, but it witnesses the five koshas by identifying them as I. In a dream, but we experience ourselves as a body, and through the body we see a world. We, the dreamer, are witnessing not only the world, we're also witnessing the person we seem to be. So, but it's because of why it is emphasized in the ancient text, but we are the witness, is to help us distinguish ourselves from the five sheaths, because the five sheaths are all objects. We're aware of this body as an object. We're aware of prana, all the life functions in the body. We're aware of them as object. We're aware of mind, all the thoughts, all the memories, all the perceptions. They're all objects. Even the intellect is an object, it's something other than us. Even the will, even our desires. I desire to eat chocolate, but that desire to eat chocolate is not myself. I'm identifying with that desire.
Yes, so the ego is witnessing all of this.
The ego is witnessing all of this and identifying itself.
But we don't, but we are trying to, but we are not the ego.
We are not the ego, but in order to eradicate the ego, we first need to isolate the ego from everything else. So long as we are facing outwards, away from ourselves, we seem to be ego. If we turn our attention back to see, who am I? This ego is aware of all these things. Who am I who is aware of this body as I? Who am I who is aware of myself as I am thinking these thoughts? So who is this I? When we turn our attention back towards the I, so thereby, if we attend to ourselves so keenly, but we exclude everything else from our awareness, we thereby separate ego from everything else. Ego then disappears because it's a formless phantom. There is no ego. Supposing you're walking in a dark forest at night, the moonlight is filtering through the trees, so you see shadows here and there. It may look to you that there are so many ghosts all around. The ghosts seem to exist when you don't look at them carefully. If you look at them carefully, oh, it's just a moonbeam. Likewise with the ego. Ego is a phantom. It doesn't actually exist. It seems to exist when it's looking away from itself. If it looks back at itself, it disappears. Because when we look back at ourselves, when we cease to be aware of anything else, what are we aware of? Just ourselves. That is pure self-awareness. In pure self-awareness, there is no ego.
I think there is āṇmā kosha. āṇmā kosha, I am the body, I am the thought, everything is āṇmā kosha.
No. āṇmā kosha is just the physical body.
Mind also is part of āṇmā kosha.
No, mind is manomaya kosha.
But it merges ultimately. āṇmā kosha.
Well, we experience them all together as one bundle, as one package. So is that?
Yes.
But all this becomes clear to the extent we put what Bhagavan says into practice. The more we practice self-investigation and self-surrender, the more we will gain that inner clarity to understand and recognize the truth in what Bhagavan is saying.
Yeah, what's confusing is this idea of the witness, because I mean, I've been taught, like, to say to meditate, okay, to watch the thoughts. Who's the one who's watching the thoughts?
Right, Bhagavan said the purpose of this term witness is not that it's never said in any of the Upanishads, witness thoughts. What is said is, the witness is that which is aware of all these things. So who is that witness? We need to if we're watching thoughts, we're not investigating the witness, we're investigating the witnessed. What is witnessed? We need to investigate who is witnessing all this.
So that's where people get stuck.
That's where people get stuck. That's where Bhagavan, the whole essence of Bhagavan's teachings is, you cannot get rid of thoughts by looking at them. So long as you're attending to thoughts, you're not only feeding the thoughts with your attention, you're also feeding the attender, namely the ego. Because the ego, that's why he says, Uru Patri Undu Mika Ongam, grasping and feeding on forms. That is, when we're attending to anything other than ourselves, we are nourishing the ego. If we turn our attention back towards ourselves, we are starving the ego, we're depriving it of its nourishment, so it becomes weaker and begins to dissolve. And eventually, if we turn our attention full 180 degrees back towards ourselves, thereby excluding everything else from our awareness, ego dissolves completely. So the whole, this teaching about the witness has been grossly misinterpreted in modern time, and possibly for the past few hundred years. But Bhagavan has clarified what it means. Ego is the witness. We should investigate, who is this ego? Who am I who is aware of all these things? This discussion shows actually how much depth of meaning there is in, I mean, this is just one verse of Bhagavan, but in all Bhagavan's verses there's so much deep implication. And only when it takes, though Bhagavan's teachings are very, very simple, and Bhagavan actually wrote just a couple of hundred verses, and half of those are Āṛṇa-Chaksharamlai, which are just two-line verses, very short verses. But Bhagavan has packed all his teachings into a very small volume of writings. But there's so much deep meaning in every verse. But we can understand the full meaning of these verses only when we consider them in the context of all his other teachings. So there's connections everywhere between ṉāṉā, who am I, and Āṇma-Viddai, and Upadesha and Uludunapadu, and the 5 hymns. There's so many connections are there. So that's why it's useful to discuss these things, because we can bring in all these connections, and the picture slowly takes shape, becomes clear to us. But as I say, the most important thing of all is to put it into practice, because only by putting it into practice do we get the clarity to have a deep understanding of what Bhagavan is saying in these verses. And do all these connections become very clear to us. And
practice is meditation?
But, yeah, meditation, but meditation on what? What is it we see? No, not nothingness. What is it we seek to know? We want to know ourselves. So meditation is, according to Bhagavan, the real meditation is meditation on ourselves. That is what he otherwise calls self-investigation, Āṭma-vichāra. Attending to anything other than ourselves, that meditating on anything other than ourselves, Bhagavan says that is anāṭma-vichāra, meditating on what is not ourselves. Who am I? That's what we need to meditate on. Who is this I? So Bhagavan sometimes referred to it as meditation, but he more often referred to it as vichara, or natam in Tamil, which means investigation. Because why are we looking at ourselves? Why are we attending to ourselves? In order to see what we actually are. So this is a very deep investigation.
It's much easier said than done.
What?
Much easier said than done.
According to Bhagavan, it's extremely easy. Why there's a reason why it's easier said than done, because in order to investigate ourselves, we need to be ready to surrender ourselves. Because this ego seems to exist so long as we're attending to other things. When we turn our attention back towards ourselves, ego is losing its hold on everything else. And unless we are willing to surrender ourselves completely, this self-investigation does seem to be very difficult. But the difficulty is not that it's actually difficult, it's our unwillingness to surrender ourselves. That is the cause of the difficulty.
How do we surrender ourselves?
By investigating ourselves. But in order to, that's why I say, but the whole thing is down to willingness. Are we willing to let go? No, we're not. We're not yet willing to let go. But by gradually following this practice, little by little, gently, slowly, we gain the willingness to surrender ourselves.
And then we have to go to an ashram and...
You don't have to go, there's only one ashram you have to go to. That is your own heart. This cannot be found anywhere outside. The truth we are seeking is ourself. We cannot find it anywhere outside.
But there are all sorts of ways and means that people have done this, like fasting.
All these may be useful preparation. This is, all other practices are useful to the extent to which they help to purify the mind. Purify the mind means, what are the impurities in the mind? Our desires and attachments. To the extent that we reduce the strength of our desires and attachments, to that extent we're purifying our mind. So all these other yoga and various forms of bhakti, of dualistic bhakti, these all means for gradually purifying the mind. But the mind needs to be purified to a certain extent, even to be willing to come to this path of self-investigation and self-surrender. So all these other ways, they are slow and roundabout ways of purification. They are necessary up to a certain point. Because if you've got a very dense bush, you want to get rid of that bush. The only way to get rid of it is to cut the root. But it's such a dense bush, you can't get at the root at first. You've first got to chop away a lot of the branches before you can even get at the root. That chopping away the branches is the initial stages of purification, which are, for which all these other practices are useful. But once we are drawn to this path, all these other means are unnecessary, because we wouldn't be drawn to this path if our mind hadn't been purified sufficiently for us to take to this path. We wouldn't find any attraction in this path. If we're attracted to the path of self-investigation and self-surrender, all the other practices become unnecessary, because they're only means to get to this point. Once we've got to this point, the only practice that is necessary is self-investigation and self-surrender. Bhagavan sometimes said it as two things, self-investigation and self-surrender, but it's actually they're the two sides of the same coin. We cannot investigate ourselves without surrendering ourselves. And we can surrender other things. We can surrender our desires and whatever to a certain extent without surrendering I. But the real self-surrender is surrendering of the I. We cannot surrender I without investigating it. So this is the practice that we have to do. It's not saying the other practices are useless. They are necessary at a certain stage in our spiritual development. But if we feel attracted to this path that Bhagavan has shown us, then other practices become unnecessary.
But we need to be with people and ideas that can help us to purify ourselves. I mean, I can't do it living in Hampstead or something.
Why not? We don't actually, what we are seeking is within ourselves. But because our mind is outward turned, Bhagavan appeared outwardly in a human form, as if he's like us, and gave us these teachings in order to tell us to turn within. So it may be helpful for us to meet like-minded people to talk about these things, and to help clarify the way and to help motivate us to follow this path. That is helpful to a certain extent, but nobody else can do this for us. We can all sit here and close our eyes in meditation, but you cannot know what the person next door to you is doing, and we need to turn our attention within to ourselves. So this cannot be done. We can discuss this thing as a group, but the practice we each have to do individually. Nobody else can do this for us. Even Bhagavan cannot do it for us. Bhagavan is giving us all the help necessary, but we need to be willing. That's why he said in the 12th paragraph of Who Am I, God and Guru are not different. Those who have, just like a prey that has fallen into the jaws of a tiger, cannot escape, so those who have fallen into the, who've come into the glance of a Guru's grace will surely be saved and will never be forsaken. However, it is necessary to follow unfailingly the path that Guru has shown. So we have to follow this path. Bhagavan gives us all the outward aid in the form of his teachings. He gives us all the inward aid by sowing the seed of love in our heart. But it's our job to nurture that seed that he has put in our heart. He's helping us. He's doing all that is necessary to help us. But Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say, the grace of three people are necessary. The grace of God, that's always available. Grace of Guru, always available. The grace of Jiva is what, that's the grace of the ego, of ourself. That is the grace that is lacking. That is, we must be willing. The grace is always there, but in order to, another nice analogy Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, it's always raining, but on the mounds, the rain runs off. In the hollows, the rain accumulates and forms lakes. So the prouder and the stronger the ego, the more the rain of grace flows off us. The more we subside, the more humble we become, the more we sink within ourselves, the more the grace can accumulate there. So the grace that is necessary is our willingness to surrender. Bhagavan, though Ramakrishna said the grace of three people, God and Guru are actually one and the same. It's just because people generally conceive of God up there and Guru in a human form, he talks like that. But actually, according to Bhagavan, God and Guru are one and the same. The grace of God or Guru is always available. The grace that is lacking is our own grace, our lack of willingness. So we need to be willing. At the moment, we've been attracted to this path. That's why we're here talking about this instead of doing so many other things that we could be doing outside. So there is, at least the interest is there. But in order to cultivate this interest, in order to strengthen it, in order to nurture it like a small plant and help it to grow into a big tree, the means is self-investigation and self-surrender. Because we are not yet willing to surrender ourselves, or we have only an iota of willingness, our progress is slow at first. But Bhagavan said, even the smallest effort made in this path will not go in vain. So every effort we make to turn our attention within, to subside, to not rise and get carried away by our desires, every effort we make in that direction is a step, we're going one step closer to our goal.
It's a bit daunting though that Bhagavan spent 6 years in a little room in the temple when he was 16 before he came out, and Ramakrishna spent 6 years praying to God, had to kill himself.
Well, Ramakrishna's story is slightly different, but about Bhagavan's story, all that happened when Bhagavan came to Tirunelveli in the first few years, that wasn't spiritual practice. all the spiritual practice he needed to do, he did in a split second that day in Madurai when that fear of death came. That drove his mind inwards. He turned inwards, and the ego that was there was dissolved forever. Because he was so absorbed in that, it took time for the person he seemed to be to return to what we take to be normality. Actually, in the ancient texts, they describe 4 types of jñānis. The Brahma Vid, Brahma Varya, Brahma, I can't remember exactly what their names are, but Bhagavan clarified there's no difference in jnana. These differences are differences in the view of the onlooker, because some jñānis seem to be completely lost to the world. They're unaware of the world. They seem to be always in a state of samadhi. That's one type. Another type, they respond a little bit to the outside world, but they're still, pretty much mostly absorbed. And the third type are slightly more what we would call behaving like a normal person, at least some of the time. The fourth type is completely normal. Bhagavan, the person we see as Bhagavan, not the actual Bhagavan, exemplified all these states in those early years. But the later years, he was behaving just like a normal person. I mean, he was, to all intents and purposes, he was just a normal person like you or me, responding to things. And
I've just been reading a book by Swami Abhishektananda, I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I've heard of him, yes.
Anyway, and he said that during those years when Bhagavan was in the temple, I don't know, was it 6 years or 10 years, I'm not sure.
It wasn't actually so long, it was,
yes. He didn't eat or drink anything.
Well, he was in Patalalinga for about several weeks. We don't know how long exactly, maybe a month or 2 at most.
So nobody came to give him food or...
No, he wasn't eating anything, but he was so completely, and that's why he didn't notice the insects were, that is the first of these 4 states that I was talking about. He was completely unaware of the world and everything. He was discovered there by some children who were playing in the temple, and they thought it was very strange, this young boy singing like that, so they started throwing stones at him. When Seshadri Swami saw the boys throwing stones into this underground temple, he chased them away, and then he went in and he saw Bhagavan there. And then when he saw him, because he's also in a similar state, he recognized at once the state that Bhagavan was in. So some other people later saw, when other people saw him coming out of the of that Patalalinga, they asked him, Swami, they asked Swami, why were you in there? He said, go in there and see. And they went down and they saw, and Seshadri Swami said, bring him out, but bring him very gently. And they lifted him. He was still unaware. Because he had been sitting there for several weeks, and the insects had been biting his thighs, the pus had formed and it had sealed him like an idol is sealed in place in a temple, but one was sealed in place. So when they lifted him, it opened all the wounds and the blood started. So they then brought him out to the Ilapay tree. This wasn't 6 years or anything. He came to Tirunelveli in September, yeah, 1st of September. For a few days he was outside, but because he was being disturbed by people, he went in there. He was probably there for, we don't know, a few weeks or maybe a month or 2. So that's September, October. It was probably in October sometime, but Seshadri Swami found him there and asked people to bring him out. Then he was placed under the Ilapay tree, but he was still, when he was placed there, people were bringing food and putting food in his mouth and he was swallowing it. But he was still pretty much unaware of the world. So much unaware of the world, the coping he had rotted and it fell off, and he was sitting naked under the tree for a few days or weeks. But then the Deepam festival was due to come, so some people told him, pilgrims are going to be coming from all over the place, it doesn't look good you sitting here naked. So they helped him, they lifted him up and they put a copine on him.
But I mean, is it possible for the body to last that long with no food or water?
Yogis supposedly can last for years, because in that state of absorption, everything slows down. Even the breathing, the heart rate, everything slows down. So the body can go on for a very long period with no food or anything, because he was in such a state of absorption.
It's well recorded with another Maima, hardly a grain of rice for weeks.
For weeks?
Yeah.
What about water?
Or a few sips of water or something.
Even people who go on hunger strike, they sometimes live for...
They don't live very long.
They can live. It is possible to live without... You can't live without water. There's a limit to how long you can live without water, but you can live without food for a month or two.
I thought he was there for years.
No, it wasn't years. It wasn't years. It was just a matter. It was between September and Deepam, which is in November, December.
Oh, I see. So
and it was at least a month or so before Deepam that he was brought out of Patalinga. So nobody knows the exact dates, but.
And the priest used to pour the water washed in which the idols were washed in his mouth.
Yes, yes.
That was the only nutrition he had.
Yeah.
The idols are washed every day in the temple. So the washed water that is left, that used to be poured in his mouth. You were unaware.
They poured it into his mouth.
Yeah.
How did they
that
pour
was
it
the
into his
nutrition.
mouth?
That was that we had.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the only food that we had.
Yeah, because he was by that time so semi-conscious of the body. But the point is that the dawn of jnana, the dissolution of ego, happened in a split second in Madurai. Afterwards, people speculated so much and said, oh, he did tapas for so many years after coming to Tirunelveli and everything. For a long time, Bhagavan there were so many stories, Bhagavan didn't dispute what the stories that were going around. But in later years, he said, the sun that rose in Madurai was the same sun that shone in Tirunelveli. That means the sun he's referring to is not the physical sun, but the sun of self-knowledge that rose there, never set. But it is to show, I mean, we can't say why these things happen the way they happen, but because Bhagavan had that role to be a very unique guru and to breathe a fresh life into the ancient philosophy of Advaita by clarifying it and simplifying it and giving it a fresh life. Because he had that function, it was possibly the divine will that he went through all these stages to show all these stages that are mentioned in the ancient Puranas and ancient texts. These are all actually possible. People do live in these states. So he exemplified all these states. But after a few years, he started behaving normally like anyone else. And then but those differences between the time he was in Patalinga and later years when he was sitting on the sofa answering questions, helping to cut vegetables in the kitchen and everything, from his point of view, there's no difference at all. The differences are only in our view. Because we see him as the person. He says, I am not this body, I'm not this person. So our view of him, because we see ourselves as a person, as a body, we see him as a body. But he is not what we see him to be. If we want to know him as he is, what is he? He says, in one verse he sings, Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Jagohil, Arivairami Paramatman Arunachala Ramanan. That is, Arunachala Ramana is the Paramatma, the Supreme Self or Supreme Spirit, the ultimate Self, but blissfully exists as awareness in the heart of all jivas, from Hari, that means from Vishnu, down to the lowest, well, he doesn't say that, but he said, beginning with Hari in the hearts of all jivas. That means in the hearts of all living beings, he is that which is shining as awareness. So he is that which is shining as I in all of us. Therefore, if to know him as he is, we need to turn within, and with heart melting with love, we need to merge in him.
So after he was enlightened, he had divine will, none of his own will.
Will is for whom? Will is for ego. When there's no ego, there's no will. So whatever happens then is divine will, yes. But that divine is nothing, he is nothing other than that divine. And the divine will is the divine, because there's no difference between, God is love. God and love are not two, God and God's love are not two different things. So what we call the divine will is God's love for us. So he is that love. He is God. But we see him as a person.
What's one question about the different states of samadhi? So, I mean, what state of samadhi was he in then? What is that irrelevant?
These different states of samadhi are classified in yoga. In Advaita, samadhi is not a term that is native to Advaita philosophy. From about the time of Shankara, Advaitins started to use this term of samadhi because to show that what is achieved by the yogis is also achieved by this. But it is not, samadhi is not an important concept in Advaita. Bhagavan said there's only one samadhi that we need to be concerned about, that is Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja Samadhi means our natural state. Our natural state is just pure awareness.
Because I mean, I always thought that Nirvikalpa Samadhi was supposed to be higher than Sahaja Samadhi. I mean, that was what I was...
Yeah, no. Sahaja Samadhi is our natural state. Sahaja Samadhi is the samadhi we're always in, but as ego, we're not aware of it because we're looking outwards. If we look back within, we'll see we were always in Sahaja Samadhi.
So why would you go into these other states like Nirvikalpa?
Good question. Bhagavan says Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the yogic Nirvikalpa Samadhi, is nothing but a state of manolaya. That is to be avoided. Because you can't make any progress when you're in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's why Bhagavan told the story of the yogi on the banks of the Ganga who kept on going into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And one day when he came out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he was thirsty. So he asked his disciple to bring water from the Ganga. When the disciple went, by the time he had come back, the yogi had gone back into Samadhi. That time he remained in Samadhi for 300 years. His disciple died, so many generations came and went, even the Ganga changed its course. After 300 years he woke up, and the first thing he did was he angrily asked, "Where's my water?" So Bhagavan said, even the most superficial, the last thought that was there before he went in was the first thought that came out. That shows that not even an iota of the vasanas were destroyed. So that 300 years in Samadhi was a complete waste of time. So Bhagavan said, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that type of Nirvikalpa Samadhi is to be avoided. But Nirvikalpa Samadhi we need is Sahaja Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That is achieved by self-investigation and self-surrender. So we don't have...
Different philosophical system then?
Very different. India was full of different philosophical systems. They were said to be 6 orthodox systems, 6 heterodox systems. That's Astika and Nastika. The 6 orthodox systems are Sankhya, yeah, sorry, I forgot. Well, Mimamsa, there's Purva Mimamsa is Vedanta, and there's Sankhya, and there's Nyaya, and there are also 2 other ones. But yes. So those are 6 systems. They're the Astika ones. They're the ones that accept the Vedas. Then there's the Nastika ones. The 6 are 4 schools of Buddhism. Jainism and Charvaka, which is materialism. But within each of these systems, there are so many subsystems. So India was rich with philosophical thought, and there was so much competition between the different schools of thought, and a lot of ideas were fed back and forth between them.
Kashmir Shaivism, do they have that idea? Or
well, that probably would be considered as a part of Vedanta. They're more or less Advaitins. They've got a slight variation of Advaita, and Advaita comes under is one form of Vedanta, which is one of the 6 orthodox Astika schools. So there's so many different. There were always so many different schools of belief in India, and but in later times, when particularly after Muslim invasion, was that sort of lively philosophical activity that was there 1,000 years ago in India, that slowly waned. And then people just learned philosophy uncritically. So they picked up some ideas from yoga, some from Sankhya, some from Vedanta, some from Pūrvamīmaṁsa. In that way, it became a mishmash. That's because uncritically just taking me, or it's said in a book like this, therefore this is the case.
So you received all this mishmash here in the West then too?
Yes, well, yes, a lot of what is, I mean, there's very little critical philosophy going on in India, even even these people who are lecturing on Vedanta and everything, they do so very uncritically. Because after Shankara, there wasn't, among the followers of Shankara, it split into different schools of Advaita, because Advaita was being attacked by other schools. Because the one major challenge to Advaita said there is only one, there are no 2. Then how to explain all this multiplicity? Advaita has to explain that. How to explain that? When they were attacked by other schools of thought, different schools arose to defend Advaita, but they each had different views. So there were, among the followers of Shankara, there were diverse views. So philosophy always, no 2 minds ever agree. Everyone sees things in their own way. But Bhagavan has come and simplified the whole thing. And if we're not here for, I mean, philosophy is an endless subject, because if we allow the mind to go outwards, like Brahma flying up to find the top of a column of fire, there's no end to science and philosophy. You can go on and on researching external things, and the more you know you don't know. But Bhagavan's teaching, the true Advaita teachings, are not going outwards, they're going inwards. So simplicity is the path. So the true Advaita is a very, very simple philosophy. That's why Bhagavan has simplified it so much. But the problem with simplicity, our minds are complex. We need to be ready to give up all our complex beliefs and everything in order to be willing to accept the simplicity. Most people it can't be so simple, but there's only one ego, and because ego rises, everything comes into existence. That's far too simple. What about all our history and our science and our philosophy and religion and all these things? Bhagavan has boiled it down to, it's all a matter of ego. When ego rises, all this, the world comes into existence, along with all its science and history and religions and politics and all these things. It's endlessly complex when we look outwards. When we look inwards, there's only one. So Bhagavan has simplified it so much. So shall I continue? No, but that's good. I mean, it's good, but just from we've been just discussing the first clause of the first sentence, and it led to so much discussion, which is good. So anyway, I'll come back to it. So Bhagavan said, since the thought, the body composed of flesh, itself is I, is the one thread on which all the various thoughts are strung. So this is the clue. In the previous verse he says, if all thoughts are dissolved, self-knowledge will shine forth. So how do you dissolve all thoughts? We need to go to the root of them. The root is ego. So long as ego is there, thoughts are there. The only time we experience a thought-free state normally is in sleep. Throughout waking and dream, The first thought, ego, is there, and all these other thoughts appearing as this world are there. So since that thought, this body is I, that is the, this is an important thing. Bhagavan often said, the ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this body. But he refers to it as a thought. Why does he refer to it as a thought? Because according to him, everything other than pure awareness, everything other than our real nature is just a thought. That is, it's a manokarpana, it's a mental fabrication. So even the first mental fabrication and the root of all other mental fabrications is ego. So, so this false, this erroneous self-awareness, I am this body, is a thought. Thoughts don't exist independent of our awareness of them. So what a thought is just awareness of anything other than ourselves. Because pure awareness is not aware of anything other than itself. If we're aware of anything other than ourselves, that awareness of something other than ourselves is a thought. So in order to be aware of ourselves as I am this body, we have to be aware of this body. This body is other than ourselves, therefore this thought, this awareness, I am this body, is a thought. And of all thoughts, it's the root of all thoughts. But though it's a thought, it's fundamentally different to all other thoughts. That is, ego is the first thought, but it's different to all other thoughts, because no other thought, all other thoughts are jada. They are not aware. They're not aware of either of themselves or of other things. The only thought that is aware is ego, because ego, all other thoughts are jada. Jada means non-aware. Ego is chit jada granti. It is the knot formed by the entanglement of chit, pure awareness, with forms, with things that are jada, non-aware. Actually, pure awareness never gets entangled. It always remains as pure awareness. But in the view of ego, ego mixes up pure awareness, which is I am, with a body. So I am this body, that is the chit jada granti. So that this awareness, I am the body, is the chit jada granti. So it's a mixture of awareness and non-aware elements. Though ego is a form of awareness, it is not real awareness, because real awareness is only the pure awareness I am. Ego is always aware of itself as I am this body, and consequently it's aware of other things. So ego is an impure form of awareness. So ego is often referred to as chittabhasa. Chittabhasa means the semblance of awareness. Or like abhasa, basic meaning of abhasa is semblance, something that seems to be something. By extension, abhasa also means a reflection. When you see your reflected image in a mirror, it's a semblance of yourself. So in that sense, abhasa, it means a reflection of awareness. But it means, the basic meaning of chittabhasa, it's a semblance of awareness. So it's not real awareness, because real awareness is only pure awareness. But it is a likeness of awareness.
So that means that bhakti is always not quite pure awareness. Bhakti yoga with it, pujas and bhajas and all these things is a sort of semi-state. Very different stages of bhakti. There's the dualistic bhakti, the bhakti that involves puja and japa and all these things. That is all good. Because what is bhakti? Bhakti is love. And it's the early stages of bhakti, it's easy to direct our devotion towards God, towards a form that we take to be God or whatever. So that is what Bhagavan calls anya bhava. That's the attitude that God is something other than myself. But in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiyā, he says,
Anya bhavatin avanaham ananya bhavamē undipara anatinam uttamam undipara. That means rather than anya bhava, the attitude that God is something other than myself, avanaham ananya bhavam. The ananya bhava, the attitude that God is not other than myself, the attitude that God is, but He is I. That's not what Bhagavan isn't talking there about meditating on the thought He is I, but the attitude that God is nothing other than that which is shining in me as I, is what he means there by avanaham ahum ananya bhava. Ananya means other, ananya means not other. What is not other than ourself? Only ourself. So that ananya bhava means meditating on ourself. That is anatinam uttamam, that is the best of all. So the best bhakti is self-investigation. Because the bhakti is sincere to the extent we are willing to surrender ourselves. If you love someone, you want to give if you truly love a person, you're not thinking of what you can get from that person. You want to give yourself to that person. So in bhakti, our bhakti is sincere to the extent to which we want to give ourselves to God. And the most effective way to give ourselves to God is to turn our attention within, because thereby ego subsides and we are surrendering ourselves to God. That's why Bhagavan says in the first sentence of the 13th paragraph of Who Am I, Āṇma-Viddai. That means other than Atma-Chintana. Atma-Chintana literally means thought of oneself, but it means self-attentiveness. Āṇma-Viddai. Vera Chintane Kalamba-Vidaku Satram Idam Kadamo. Not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than self-attentiveness. Atmanishta Paranai Irupte. Thereby being as Atmanishta Paran, being as one who is established in and as one's real nature, Atman, Tanne Isanuku Alipadam. That alone is giving oneself to God. So the most effective way, the truest way to surrender ourselves is to turn within. So, bhakti leads to surrender. Surrender begins with, when we start surrendering, we first want to give up, we want to, thy will be done, we want to give our will to God. But we can never totally surrender our will to God without surrendering ourselves to God, because so long as we exist as a separate entity, we cannot totally avoid likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. We may be able to reduce the strength of our desires and attachments to a certain extent by dualistic devotion, but in order to get rid of, to surrender our will totally to God, we need to be ready to surrender ourselves to God. And we can surrender ourselves to God only by investigating ourselves. So bhakti leads to surrender, and the pinnacle of bhakti is surrender. The pinnacle of surrender is vichara, self-investigation. So this path Bhagavan has shown us, this is a path of pure love. Because we cannot investigate ourselves without surrendering ourselves. And what can be greater love than giving oneself to the one one loves? So this Bhagavan's path is the path of the purest form of bhakti. So since this thought, what he refers to here is the thought, this body is I, that is ego. Since this ego is the one thread on which all the various thoughts are strung, if one goes within, then he says, nāṉā iḍamedeṉṭṛuṭ pōṇā. That means if one goes within investigating, nāṇā iḍamedeṇṭṛuṭ has two meanings. It can either be taken as two questions, nāṇā, who am I? Iḍamedeṇṭṛuṭ, what is the place? Or it can be taken as, what is the place implies what is the place from which I rise? Or it can be taken as nāṇā iḍamedeṇṭṛuṭ, means what is the place from which I spreads. From which I spread. In other words, what is the place from which I rise? The place from which we arise. Bhagavan often uses place in a metaphorical sense, because obviously ego doesn't rise from any place in time or space. Ego, where does he? In sleep, we alone exist. In waking and dream, ego rises, and consequently everything else rises. So from where does ego rise? It rises from ourself. So the place from which ego rises is our real nature, which is pure awareness. So if we go within investigating, who am I, what is the place from which I rise, niṉaivugaḻpōy, thought ceasing, ṉāṉā tāṇāyt āṉma-ņāṉamē. Ātma-ņāṇā here means pure self-awareness, will shine spontaneously. Tāṇāyt means spontaneously or as oneself. Guhayul means within the cave. That means the cave of our heart. Nāṉā, that means that as I am I. So if the thought, so the whole sentence means, since the thought, the body composed of flesh, itself is I, alone is the one thread on which all the various thoughts are strung. If one goes within investigating, who am I, what is the place from which I rise, or I spread, thoughts will cease, and in the cave of one's heart, pure self-awareness, ātma-ņāṇā, will shine spontaneously as I am I. Here Bhagavan uses a term, nāṉā, which in many English books, in many English translations, is translated as I-I, which is a mistranslation, because in Tamil, like ṉāṇā means I who. The am is understood there. Or nāṇidu means I am this. But it literally means I this. The am is understood. So in nāṇā, the am is understood. So the reason Bhagavan uses this term nāṇā, it is to contrast with ego. Ego is nāṇidu, I am this. But that is always, this is always referring to something other than ourself. This body, this mind, this prana, this intellect, this will. That is, the ego identifies itself with this bundle of these 5 things. Whereas all these things are actually other than ourselves, because we exist in sleep without being aware, and we exist and we're aware of ourselves in sleep without being aware of any of these things. So these 5 sheaths cannot be ourselves. So when we are aware of ourselves as I am this, we are identifying with ourselves with something other than ourselves. So the reason Bhagavan uses this term I in this context is when the true knowledge dawns, when the pure awareness dawns, it will be clear to us that I am nothing other than myself. We cannot be anything other than ourselves. I cannot be anything other than I. So in the state of pure awareness, I shines only as I, not as this or that or anything else. So the first time Bhagavan used this phrase ṇāṇā in this context of when ego dies, the self-awareness shines as I am I. This is the first time that Bhagavan wrote this verse in April 1927. A few months later, Bhagavan wrote this on Murugan's request. There were 3 works Bhagavan wrote on Murugan's request. One is this Āṇma-Viddai. The second is Upadesha, the 30 verses. And the third is Uḍaliduvē, the 40 verses on reality. These all Bhagavan wrote for Murugana. So this was written in April 27. A few months later, Bhagavan wrote Upadesha, and a year later he wrote Uḍaliduvē. In all these 3, but in verse 20 of Upadesha, Bhagavan uses the same phrase ṇāṇā when he says when ego dies, one thing will appear as nāṉā. That's our own real nature. He says the same also in verse 30 of Uludunapadu. So he uses it in all these cases. The reason he uses this term, I am I, is to distinguish it from ego, which is I am this. Ego is always aware of itself as something other than itself. Our real nature, the pure awareness, is always aware of itself only as itself, not as anything else. So that's the significance of this term, nāṉā, I am I. And he, in all these three places, in this verse, in verse 20 of Upadeshundya, and verse 30 of Uludunapadu, Bhagavan uses the term ṭāṇāyt or ṭāṇāha, both of which means, literally ṭāṇāyt means being oneself or as oneself. But it's a term that is used in the sense that we would use the adverb spontaneously in English. So it can mean as oneself, or it can also mean spontaneously. In the context, generally it's best to translate it as spontaneously, but it does have that additional meaning. Both are appropriate. Why did it shine spontaneously? Because if the clouds, if the sun is hidden by clouds, when the clouds are blown aside, the sun shines forth spontaneously. The sun is actually always shining. Its shining is obscured by the presence of clouds. When the clouds are blown aside, it shines forth spontaneously. Likewise, our real nature, the pure awareness that we actually are, is always shining. It seems to be obscured by the rising of thoughts. When thoughts are all dissolved, when all thoughts all cease, what shines forth spontaneously is what is always there, which is pure awareness, that is what Bhagavan refers to here as Atmajnana. That's the pure self-awareness. That shines forth spontaneously as I am I. And where does it shine? It shines in the cave of the heart.
So when the ego disappears,
yes,
what remains is there is no concept of I. The I disappears.
Well, there's no concept.
You become.
Well, but what am I really? What we really are is the ego is not the real I. Ego is a distorted form of the real I. The real I is just that pure awareness. Awareness is always aware of itself. And I is a pronoun that refers to self-awareness, because it's a first-person pronoun. It's referring to oneself. Only that which is aware can refer to itself. So I actually is a pronoun that denotes self-awareness. But because we have now mixed our self-awareness with these five sheaths, we say, I am sitting, I am talking, I am thinking. We are confusing I with all these things. But none of these are I. What I actually is, that's why Bhagavan said beautifully in verse 21 of Upadeshundya, after saying that the one pōṇā, the one whole reality, shines forth as I am I. Then in the next verse he says, nāṇanam sotporul āṇma-Viddai. That is always the true import of the word I. That means that thing, what shines, the pure awareness that shines forth as I am I, that is always the true import of the term I. Nāṇanam sotporul āṇma-Viddai, ṇāṇā-tratukatamundi-para, namadimme nikatalundi-para. Why? Because of the non-existence of ourself in sleep which is devoid of I. Bhagavan is playing with the word. When he says sleep is devoid of I, he means it's devoid of ego. But still I exist in sleep. So the I that doesn't exist in sleep is ego, the false I, the imposter I. But real I exists in sleep. So that is always the true import of the term I. So when ego dies, what remains is I alone. Ego is not I alone. Ego is I am this. It's I mixed up with other things. It's an adjunct mixed form of awareness. But pure awareness, the real I is just pure awareness.
So what remains is pure awareness. Remains is the wrong word.
Yes, yes. But it's important. Awareness is not something other than ourself. Awareness is ourself. What we actually are is pure awareness. So when I dies, I alone remains. There's a verse in, this is not actually an original verse, this is based on Bhagavan translated one verse from Sanskrit, which is the last verse in Uludunaptu Anabandham. But it's quite a bit, Akila Vedanta Siddhanta Sarate Aham Unmeyaha Uravan. That is, I will say the truth, which is the essence of all of Vedanta. Aham Setu, I dying. Aham Adu Ahi, I becoming that. Ari Vuruvam Ab Aham, that I which is pure awareness, which is the form of pure awareness. Ade Mitcham Ari. That is, when I dies, I alone will remain.
But that remaining I, there's no personal part.
No, it's not a personal I, it's just the pure awareness, the infinite whole.
Yeah, the infinite whole.
Yes,
so all the sort of personal aspects is
yeah. The personal aspect is the ego that identifies itself as a person. That is the personal I.
Yes.
Michael, when we die, do all the 5 sheaths die with us?
Well, obviously this physical body dies. Bhagavan says in the 8th paragraph of Who Am I, when body dies, mind grasps the prana and takes it with it. That is a metaphorical way of saying, yeah, okay, the physical body dies, but in the well, actually, what remains is the causal body, the vasanas. But they are the they are the seeds that sprout again as these the other 4 sheaves.
So they go up to heaven or whatever.
Well, yeah, whatever happens. But I mean, when we sooner or later we take birth again, whether in a world like this or in some heavenly world or some hell-like world, we take birth again. Whatever world we take birth in, we're aware of ourselves as a body, and as the body is alive, and there's a mind, and there's an intellect, and there's a will. So it all sprouts out. So what survives the death of the body? We lose. I mean, a lot of things get seemingly lost at the time of death. All our memories go. That's part of Manamaya Kosha. The life in this body goes, but the seed of life remains there. The seed of all these things remains in the Anandamaya Kosha. So, in the body we experience as ourself in dream is different from the body we experience as ourself now. That body in dream may be injured, but when we wake up, we don't find an injury in this body. So, though it's the same body, though it's a different body, it seems to us to be the same body. Because so if this body dies and we are born again in we again are born in some other state, that will seem to us to be still the same body. Though it will have a different name and a different form, our experience of it is this body is I.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the memories, the karma or the vasanas vasanas.
The vasanas are what gets carried over, and along with the vasanas, of course, the fruit of the past actions also get carried.
And that's all in the āṇmā-Viddai, or is it quite complicated? It's very young.
Well, we don't have to analyze these things too much because these are all other than ourselves. Yeah. But the basic thing is, the āṇmā-Viddai kosha is the ego's will, all its desires, all its likes and dislikes. Those get carried on from life to life to life. So if we develop bhakti in this life, we carry that bhakti over to the next life. So whatever spiritual practice we do gets carried over with us. If we purify our mind in this lifetime by reducing the strength of our desires and attachments for things other than ourselves, that purity gets carried over with us. So that is why no spiritual practice ever goes in vain.
Good.
We may do very little, but even the little we do is worthwhile because we are going to carry it forward.
Get your money's worth today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would it not be better for the ego to die rather than the body to die?
If ego dies, everything dies. Because ego is the seed. So the whole purpose, why we're here today, why we're talking about this subject, our sole aim is death of ego. In one verse, Sadhwan wrote in Tamil, but he translated it into a verse in English, was not to teach the world the myth, not for name and fame that hails, there a sage in Samadhi dwells. 'Tis not for these I sing this hymn, only for the great reward, the death of ego I pray my Lord. So that is our sole aim. We don't want name and fame, we don't want to be praised as a great Mahatma or anything. These are all worldly achievements. They're all great for the ego. But the ego, we have identified, the ego is the thief. Bhagavan says, this ego is the thief that is stealing us of our birthright, which is infinite happiness. So we want to be free of this ego. We don't want to aggrandize this ego. So that's our sole aim, is the eradication of ego. And that is what Bhagavan, how to eradicate the ego? Turn within him and investigate, who am I? What is the source from which I've risen? So in this, that is, as I say, this is one long sentence, which is most of the verse. So the final clause of this sentence, the main clause of the sentence is, in the cave, understood the cave implies the cave of one's heart, Atmajnana, pure self-awareness, will shine spontaneously as I am I. And then in the next sentence he says, iduvē mōṇamē. This alone is silence. vāṉamē, the one space. Space here he's referring to the space of pure awareness. tāṉamē, the abode of bliss. Tāṇam is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word sthana, which means place. So here it means the abode. āṇmā-viddai means the abode of bliss. So when in the previous verse, in each of the verses he's talking about the death of ego, or in previous verse he doesn't specifically say death of ego. He says when all thoughts are dissolved when thought is dissolved in such a manner that it doesn't revive even an iota, in the heart space, which alone is real, oneself, who is the sun of pure awareness, will shine spontaneously. And then he says, ruḍaliduvē, darkness will cease. That's the darkness of self-ignorance. iduvē, suffering will end. Pōṇā, happiness will search forth. So in the same way he says, here he's saying, he emphasizes at the end, ṭāṉamē, this is the abode of bliss. So the state in which, the state of Atmajnana, the state of pure self-awareness, which shines spontaneously as I am I, when we investigate this ego, and thereby all thoughts along with the ego cease to exist. That pure self-awareness, iduvē mōṇamē, this alone is silence. vāṇamē, the space of the one space, meaning one space of pure awareness, the abode of bliss. And the next verse also, he ends with the term iṉba-vikārsamē, the blossoming of happiness. And in the fourth verse, he ends with iṉba-ambodiē, the ocean of infinite happiness. And in the fifth verse, he ends, the final words are, ṭāṉamē, happiness will appear. So the fruit of, what is the fruit, why should we bother about this, this Āṇma-Viddai, this science of self-knowledge? One thing we all want, one thing every living being wants, is to be happy. How to be happy? This is the way. Because if we seek happiness, happiness is our real nature. There's no happiness in anything other than ourselves. So if we want to experience happiness, turning within and knowing ourselves as we actually are, that is the only way. So Bhagavan's teachings are all about happiness. That is the true goal of all human beings. But the problem is people are seeking happiness in the wrong way. Everyone is seeking happiness. Boris Johnson is seeking happiness in doing whatever he's doing. Hitler was seeking happiness. Stalin was seeking happiness. From the worst sinners to the greatest saints, everyone, from the smallest ant to the highest God, all are seeking happiness. But where is happiness? Happiness is our real nature. If we want to be truly happy, if we want to experience infinite happiness, eternal happiness, happiness without end, without break, this is the path, to turn within and to know what we actually are. And in order to experience this happiness, all we have to do is to turn our attention within. Therefore, aiyē ati sulapam, Āṇma-Viddai aiyē ati sulapam. Therefore, are extremely easy, Āṇma-Viddai extremely easy. If we want it, if we complain that it's difficult, it's because we don't yet want it enough. We are still not truly convinced by Bhagavan's teachings. We're still believing that we get happiness outside ourselves. But the very nature of mind is to go after happiness. So the fact our mind is going outside means we still don't really believe what Bhagavan has taught us. We may understand at a superficial level in the mind, but yes, actually happiness is only within. Whatever happiness I seem to get from other things is actually happiness coming only from within. Though we understand that at a superficial level, we are not convinced at a deep level. So we continue seeking happiness outside. So we are unwilling to surrender ourselves. And so, it's so difficult, this path Bhagavan has taught us. We have to believe what he says and put it into practice. The more we put it into practice, the easier it will become. Because the more we put it into practice, the more willing we will be to surrender ourselves, to let go of everything else. And that is the price to be paid.
I don't think it's willingness, because we don't know anything else until we've understood. Once we've understood, then we can start thinking about but so long as we have strong desires and attachments, we are not willing to let go of ourselves. Well, we don't know we've got strong desires and attachments until we start becoming aware.
Well, we may not, I think everyone is aware of their desires and attachments. We may not think of them in those terms, but these are impediments. But we all know, I like chocolate, I like cinemas, I like football, I like this, I like that.
Nothing wrong with chocolate?
What?
Is there anything wrong with chocolate?
Nothing wrong with chocolate. The wrong is our desire for chocolate, our liking for chocolate. That is the trouble. There's nothing wrong with football. There's nothing wrong with, some people may enjoy warfare. Nothing wrong with warfare. The problem is our likes and our dislikes. We dislike warfare because we don't want to be killed. Some other people like warfare because they like killing. But the whole problem is our likes and dislikes. If we had no likes or dislikes, we'd be unaffected by war. We'd be unaffected by famine, starvation. All human suffering is ultimately caused by our likes and dislikes.
It's even when you're aware that you need to surrender, it's really hard to surrender. When you think you are ready to let go of everything, something comes along that shows you that you're not willing to let go.
Yes.
And I had an exam last week, which I had studied for a long time, and I desperately wanted to pass. But I knew I had to surrender this desire to pass the exam, but I couldn't. I wanted to pass. I mean, I would like to lower this thing and not bother whatever happens.
Yes.
Krishnamurti said his secret was that he didn't mind what happens, but I still do mind sometimes.
We do. But what is the root of all our desires and attachments, all our likes and dislikes? They're all rooted in the fact that we identify ourselves, we experience ourselves as I am this body, I am this person. So as a body, we need so many things. We need food, clothing, shelter. We need water, we need air. So we have desire for all these things. And when all our desires are satisfied, we're still not very secure, because though I've got all the food, clothing and shelter I need for today, tomorrow I may not have. So I want more and more money in my bank account. I want to accumulate, so I try and accumulate more money, and I have £1 million and I'm still not satisfied, because that £1 million I may lose it on the stock market or something. So I want more and more and more. Even these billionaires, nowadays in the world, there are centi-billionaires. This person who owns Amazon, Jeff Bezos or whatever, he has something like $120 billion. But is he satisfied? He's still not satisfied. No, nothing can satisfy us. Because the only thing that can satisfy us is infinite happiness.
I just recently watched the Mahabharata, and I'm afraid I'm not very good at Indian names.
Yeah.
But the eldest brother of the good guy, when he gets up the final stairs, and his last test is that he goes in and he sees the 100 brothers on the right, all dressed in nice clothes and drinking wine and all in white and everything. And he goes on to the other side looking for his family, and they're all in putrefaction.
Yeah.
They can't see each other, and he has to sit there in the stink.
Yeah.
And that is the last test of this duality.
Yeah.
What do I like?
Yeah.
What do I dislike?
Yeah.
And I just found that horrific.
Yeah. But this is the spiritual part. We have to be ready to let go of everything.
Yeah.
And Bhagavan says in verse 26 of just 1 minute, Bhagavan says, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego does not exist, everything does not exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what it is giving up everything. So we have to be ready to let go of everything, including ourselves, in order to experience the happiness we're seeking. That is the price. Complete surrender is the price to be paid for happiness. So until we are willing to surrender ourselves completely, we have some willingness. We're getting close to getting that willingness, but we have to continue following this path until that love to surrender ourselves becomes all-consuming love and swallows all our other desires.
It's not as easy as
Sorry?
It's not as easy as
it is extremely easy. Aiyē ati sulapam. Extremely easy. We make it difficult by being unwilling to let go.
So if the ego dies, I'm curious what's left.
That's what we're all waiting to find out.
And what's left a self or I? Why call it?
It is what you actually are. We refer to ourselves as I.
But I imagine if the ego dies, there's no personal.
No, it's no personal. What remains is just pure awareness. And pure awareness is always aware of itself. So it is aware of itself in our language as I. I is the term we use to refer to ourselves.
I'm just aware that there is a conversation between Buddhism and Hinduism over a long period of time about I, and when the self disappears, what is left. So it's
right. Yes. Well, I think a lot of that discussion was due to a certain amount of confusion on both sides. I'm not saying everyone was confused, but those who got engaged in that argument, there is no such thing as the self. In English, people often use the term the self. There is no such thing as the self. But what the term self refers to, self is actually, though it's generally taken to be a noun, it's actually a pronoun, because it always refers to something. Everything is itself. These flowers are themselves. That candle is itself. I am myself. You are yourself. There is no self other than the thing whose self it is. So self is, there's no, the problem is that people tend to reify the idea of self. As if when we say the self in English, we're making it into a thing. But the only self is yourself. What according to Bhagavan, what actually exists is only, he said in one sentence in the 7th paragraph of Who Am I, the first sentence, he says, Yatātamai ulludu atmasarupam andre. Yatātamai means actually. Ulludu means what exists. So what actually exists is only atmaswarupa. Atmaswarupa is a term. Swarupa literally means own form. But in effect it means the nature. So the nature of oneself, the real nature of oneself, the actual nature of oneself, that alone actually exists. So our real nature, in Indian languages, there are no articles, no the or no word equivalent of the. So in Sanskrit, the term used is Atma, which has a long etymology, but in practice, in most contexts, when it is used in the same sense as the English term self, as in oneself, myself, yourself, himself, herself. From a context, it is understood what it is referring to. When Atma is used on its own, it means oneself. Buddha, in a number of places, one of the famous sayings of Buddha, I think it comes in the Dhammapada, but it's also repeated in other places in the Pali Canon. In Pali, it's something like Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. That in Sanskrit, that would be Sarva Dharma Anatma. Dharma in that context means phenomena. It's something that is, dharma comes from the root dru, which is to hold. So what is held together, what is constructed. So all phenomena are anatma, is what he said. This was interpreted by some Buddhist philosophers to mean that he's saying there's no Atma. But what he's actually saying is no phenomena is oneself. That Bhagavan says exactly the same. Whatever phenomena are things that appear and disappear. What we actually are is the screen on which the screen of pure awareness on which everything appears and disappears. So this body is a dharma, it's something held together, it's a phenomenon. This now seems to be ourself, but this is not ourself. This is basic teaching in Advaita, but anatma means anything other than oneself, anything that is not oneself. Anatma simply means not oneself. So all phenomena are not oneself. That is, what Buddha said there is in exact agreement with Advaita. It's later philosophers who reified the idea of self and said, on the Buddhist side they said there is no self, on the Hindu side, yes, there is a self. But it's a meaning of, if you say there's no self, then you say there's nothing. Because everything is itself, so if there's no self, there is nothing. Obviously there is something. The question is, what is that thing? According to Bhagavan, that thing is only our real nature, what we actually are. We alone exist. In another place, in the first sentence of the 13th paragraph of Ulludunabdi, he says, jñāṇamē tāṇamē. That means oneself, who is jnana, alone is real. Real means what actually exists. Jnana there, in that context, means awareness. So the pure awareness that we actually are, that alone is real. That alone actually exists.
And Bhagavan's way, his method or way of living this, is to remain aware of this sense of self, this feeling of self.
Yeah, you can say aware of sense of self, but just be aware of yourself. But we're always aware of ourselves. There's never a moment when we are not aware of ourselves. Even in sleep, we're aware of ourselves. We are always aware, I am. We're aware of our own existence. The problem is, in waking and dream, we are now aware of ourselves as if we were an object, as if we were this body. So the pure awareness I am is always shining, but it seems to be obscured in waking and dream because we identify ourselves with a body. So instead of being aware of ourselves just as I am, we're aware of ourselves as I am this. So, and because we're aware of ourselves as I am this, we're also aware of many other things. And so we're constantly attending to other things. So self-awareness is not a problem. Self-awareness is always there. The problem is that we neglect our self-awareness. We are so interested in other things that we overlook or neglect to attend to ourself, to our fundamental self-awareness. All Bhagavan, the practice Bhagavan taught us is to be attentively self-aware. Instead of being negligently self-aware as we all usually are, to be attentively self-aware.
We take it for granted, in fact.
Yeah, we're constantly saying I without really thinking about what I means. Like I gave an example. We say, I was walking thinking about what I would say. There, first I is the I that's walking is body. The I that's thinking is mind. The I that is saying is speech. So which is actually I? We have a confused awareness of ourselves at the moment. Why we have a confused awareness? Because we're looking. So long as we look at other things, so long as we attend to things other than ourselves, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. We are aware of ourselves as if we're a body. So in order to So the very nature of ego is self-ignorance. That is, though it is self-aware, it's not aware of itself as it actually is. It's a distorted self-awareness, which in effect is self-ignorance. In order to get rid of self-ignorance, we need self-knowledge. In order to get rid of erroneous awareness of ourselves, we need correct awareness of ourselves. So in order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, we need to attend to ourselves. When we start this practice, we are turning our attention partially towards ourselves. Not fully, because we still retain some awareness of other things. So to put it in pictorial terms, we are trying to turn, our aim is to turn 180 degrees away from all other things, back towards ourselves. In practice, we are turning maybe 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, maybe even 170 degrees. But even when we turn 179 degrees, we still retain some awareness of things other than ourselves. So long as there's even the slightest awareness of anything other than ourselves, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. Because what we actually are is just pure awareness. That is awareness that is never aware of anything other than itself. So only when we turn the full 180 degrees are we aware of ourself alone and not of anything else. Everything else recedes into the background, withdraws, we isolate ourselves from all other things. Then when we are aware of ourselves in ourself alone, that is pure self-awareness, that is the reality.
So now, for example, just to turn away from this room and what's going on here and to
turn back towards ourselves, see ourselves. Now we're seeing all these things, we need to see ourselves.
And that can be done at any point?
At any point, because the self-awareness is always there in the background. Yeah. We go to a cinema, we sit in the cinema for 3 hours, or 2 hours or whatever, looking at a screen. But we never notice the screen because we're more interested in the pictures. So what we have to do is to lose interest in the pictures and be more interested in just seeing the screen. The screen on which all these pictures, all phenomena appear, on the screen of self-awareness.
And the screen is self.
That is what we actually, it is ourself in the sense that it is what we actually are. That is why it is called Āṇma. But the term Āṭma can refer either to ourself as ego or to ourself as we actually are. That's why Bhagavan, when he often, Bhagavan uses, generally because Bhagavan was speaking in Tamil, the term he used most commonly for oneself is ṭān, which is a Tamil term. Sometimes he used Āṭma, because when he's writing in poetry, sometimes Āṭma fits better. Or in Tamil, sometimes he says Āṭma, sometimes Āṇma, which is an alternative form of Āṭma in Tamil. But whatever it is, he's referring to oneself. In many verses, Bhagavan is using, like I read that verse, the final verse of Ulurunapadu. He's using I. He said, when I dies, I alone remain. So the I that dies is ego, the I that remains is what we actually are. But that is but they're not two different I's. They're one and the same I. It's like saying, when the snake dies, what remains is the rope. Ego is nothing other than what we actually are, but it is not what we actually are. That may sound confused. That is, the snake is not anything other than the rope, but the rope is not a snake.
There's clearly something, well, you could say, wrong with us, wrong with our lives, otherwise we wouldn't be coming here to try and fix something.
Yeah. And Bhagavan has diagnosed what is the root of that wrong. What is wrong with your life is you. You're a problem, and the solution is you.
Yes. And the method to understand this is to look at the eye?
Yes, but look means obviously we can't look with our eyes and see. Metaphorically, look at yourself means attend to yourself.
And I know Bhagavan said there's something easy about this practice.
He says it's extremely easy, the easiest of all.
But the self isn't an object like the body.
It is not an object, so we can't attend to it as an object. But we are never aware of any objects without being aware of ourself as the subject who is aware of those objects. The subject is ego. Ego is always self-aware. So that self-awareness in the ego is what we need to be attending to. It's not an objective inquiry, it's a self-inquiry, self-investigation.
I can't help feeling that every time I hear something or read something about this, I'm sort of imagining what the practice is and trying to do what I'm imagining. And,
yes. Yeah, but the more we put it into practice, the clearer it becomes. Because the one thing but Bhagavan says here, well, Murugan says in Anupallavi, that's the sub-refrain of this song, he says, even, that is what, if you, in Indian language, in Tamil, if you want to say something is very clear, you say it's Ulankai nelikani. Ulankai means the palm. Nelikani is a small fruit, the amla fruit. So Ulankai nelikani means it's as clear as a fruit in your hand. Murugan says even the fruit in your hand is unclear in comparison with self. Because the one thing that we're always clearly aware of is I am.
Is it because it's so close that it's difficult to notice?
It's not difficult to notice, it's very easy to notice. We overlook it because of our lack of interest, because we're more interested in other things. We think we get happiness from other things, so we're always attending to other things. Bhagavan says there is no happiness in any other thing. You alone are happiness. So since we're all seeking happiness, if we're seeking happiness anything other than ourselves, we're seeking it in the wrong place. Nothing wrong with seeking happiness. We should seek happiness, but we should seek it in the right place. All the troubles in the world come because we're seeking happiness in the wrong place.
It's our habit.
It's our habit, yes. But the root of that habit is ego. Because as ego, we experience ourselves as a body. As a body, we are dependent on other things. We need air, we need water, we need food, we need clothing, we need this, we need that. So we cannot, when we rise as ego, we have likes and dislikes. Because when we get the things that we need, we feel pleasure, satisfaction. When we are deprived of the things we need, we feel dissatisfaction. So out of that arise all the likes and dislikes. All problems arise from that. So the root of all problems is you. And the solution to all problems is you.
A lot of people who know me would agree with you.
I'm not talking personally. I'm not talking personally. Okay, I'll put it in other terms. The problem is I. Problem is me.
But the problem is that we do need food and clothes.
No, you don't. There was a devotee of Bhagavan called Kavyaganta. He was very interested in doing all sorts of yoga and tapas and everything. He had tried doing japa for so many days and fasting and so many things. Once he came to Bhagavan and said, Bhagavan, it seems to me that we can live on 3 rupees a month. Bhagavan said, we can live even without the body. Why 3 rupees? We say we need things because we think we have this body. Of course this body needs food, this body needs air to breathe, it needs water to drink, it needs food, it needs shelter, everything. But are you the body? If you're the body when you need all these things, then your life is going to be endless turmoil. What?
I won't have life if I don't breathe and eat.
What do you mean by life? Is life just the pumping of the heart and the breathing? You yourself are the life. The pure awareness that you actually are, that is the real life. You are that. You don't need anything to live. In sleep, what do you have? You've got nothing. But you're perfectly happy in sleep. You exist in sleep, you're aware of your existence in sleep, and you're happy. What more do we need than that? The whole problem comes because we want more than that. That's why this seems difficult, because of all our desires. And the root of the desires arise because we take a body to be ourselves. And of course a body has so many needs. So when we take the body to be ourselves, the body's needs become our needs. And then we tie ourselves to a perpetual cycle of alternating satisfaction and dissatisfaction. And we give rise to so many likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, everything. All the trouble comes, all because of this identification of ourselves with the body. The identification there means we actually experience that body as ourself. This body is I, that's my experience. I'm actually aware of this body as I. So it's such a deep-rooted thing. But if we could root out that false self-awareness, I am this body, all problems will be solved.
I still don't get it. My Atman lives in my body. I fast for 10 days and I feel okay, but I know that if I keep fasting forever...
When you say my Atman, you mean you exist in the body.
Yeah.
The you who exists in the body is not what you actually... That is, ego exists in the body. But ego always identifies itself as body. Body exists in you. The whole world exists in you.
Yeah, I see the world, I comprehend the world with my head.
Not your brain, your mind. The brain is a part of the world.
Yeah, that's material, the mind.
Mind. But mind is only ever aware of what appears within it. In a dream we are aware of a world. We seem to be in a world in dream. But when we wake up, we understand that whole dream world was in us. Because whatever appears, appears in the mind. So mind is only aware of what appears within it. So the whole universe is in the mind. And where is the mind? The mind is in you. In the final verse, Bhagavan talks about, he refers to talking about the reality, what we actually are, which he refers to as āṇamale and āṇma. Āṇamale, myself. Āṇamale means Arunacha. Arunacha, myself, which shines as the eye to the mind eye. That means the eye is what sees the physical, the world. But what sees through the eye is the mind. So, the eye to the mind eye means the awareness in which the mind, the awareness which gives light to the mind to see other things. The mind has a light of awareness by which it knows other things. But the source of that light of awareness, the original awareness from which the seeming awareness called mind arises, is our real nature, the pure awareness, what we actually are. That Bhagavan calls the eye to the mind eye, which is the eye to the five senses beginning with eyes. That the mind eye is the eye to the five senses beginning with eye, which illumine the five elements beginning with space. And then so āṇamale, myself, shines as the eye to the mind eye, and then he says, and as the space to the mind space. What that means is the whole physical space is called Buddhakasha in Sanskrit. Buddha means physical. The physical space is contained within the, sometimes called Manakasha or Chittakasha, the mind space. And the mind space is contained within Atmakasha, the space which is yourself. So you don't need anything. Everything needs you. If you only because you see it, this whole world seems to exist. So the whole world depends for its seeming existence upon you. But you who see the world are not you as you actually are. It's only when we rise as ego that we see the world. But pure awareness always remains as it is, unaffected by the appearance of the world. Because the world appears only in the view of ego. So if we turn our attention back towards ourselves, this ego will dissolve, and what will remain is the pure awareness, which is what we actually are.
Would you change the ego to function in your life? I mean, how would you concentrate in the world without ego? How would you achieve anything with that?
Why to achieve anything?
You have to do things and you have to leave, you have to, I don't know, I mean, you can do good things for other people. And
all these things seem to be necessary because we now experience ourselves as a body in this world. But one day this body is going to die. Then whatever we've achieved is of no use. It's all the dream. Death is like the ending of a dream. In a dream we may achieve so many things. When we wake up from a dream, what value do all our achievements have?
I don't understand how would you live in this world if the ultimate goal of spiritual practice is to eradicate ego, stop desiring anything other than self?
Why do we live in this world?
Why? Because we exist. We didn't have choice.
Who exists? What exists in the world is this body. Because we take the body to be ourselves, we say we exist in the world. But if we are this body, when this body dies, we die. But are we this body? This body is something that, this body appears in waking, in the present state. In dream, you're aware of yourself as a body, but not this body, some other body. So which body is yourself, the dream body or this body? Since you're aware of yourself now, without being aware of that dream body cannot be what you actually are. In dream, you're aware of yourself without being aware of this body. So this body cannot be what you actually are. In sleep, you're aware of yourself without any body. So no body, no phenomenon can be yourself. So it depends what our aim is. If we have aims and ambitions in this world, fine, that's our choice. But if we are dissatisfied, if we have understood that whatever we achieve in life is going to be unsatisfactory, whether we achieve an enormous amount of money, whether we do good work in the world, whether we do, whatever we do, nothing is going to satisfy us. We are always seeking satisfaction, but the satisfaction is always eluding us because there is no satisfaction in the world. Satisfaction is your real nature. Satisfaction lies within us.
Also, when you mention surrendering, does that mean you surrender the whole sort of even the notion of having free will?
Yes, yes. But will is, whose will is it? It's ego's will. So when we surrender ego, we surrender its will along with it. In fact, we cannot surrender our will entirely without surrendering ego. Because so long as we rise as ego, we're aware of ourselves as a person, so we inevitably have some likes, dislikes, desires, needs, wants. So if we want to surrender our will completely, if we want to be free of all desires, we have to be free of the one who has desires. That is ego. But there's no compulsion in this. We come to this path when we are dissatisfied with everything else, when we've understood that there is that we can never achieve satisfaction in anything else, nothing outside us is going to satisfy us.
Even building an ashram, you need ego to plan and...
Yes, yes, but why who asked you to build an ashram? It's another desire. Bhagavan never had an ashram. People built an ashram for him and they called it Ramana Ashram. Bhagavan said, this has got nothing to do with me.
Can I say, basically, we're looking for the subject.
Yes.
And the objects are getting in the way.
Yes, the problem is the subject always confuses itself with an object. The subject is ego. So we are not looking just for the subject, we are looking for the reality of the subject, what lies behind the subject.
Right, and once we glimpse that, the ego disappears.
Yes. Because the reality of ego is pure awareness. In pure...
Which is subject?
No, ego is subject. Because the subject is that which is aware of objects. That is ego. Pure awareness is not aware of any objects, because it's just pure awareness. It's awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself.
Which is reality.
Which is reality. That is what we actually are.
Now, aren't you referring to that as a subject?
No, that is not the subject. Because for that there are no objects. That is the infinite whole. How can the infinite whole be subject or object? That is the reality of the subject, what lies behind the subject.
Isn't it all just language, object, and
okay, it is language, yes, but we use language when we are trying to understand things. So now, why we are trying to understand these things, we all want happiness. We've all been seeking happiness. Well, throughout this life, we know we have. If this life is just a dream, there are numerous lives like this. We've been seeking happiness. We've never found the happiness we're seeking. Okay, we find little bits and pieces of happiness here and there. But what we really want is infinite happiness. That we haven't found yet. So, I've forgotten what your question was now.
I just need a practical advice. How would you live in this world without sense of ego? With the sort of without.
We can't live as a body without ego, because it's ego that is aware of itself as I am this body. But what we need to ask ourselves is, are we better off? The state of ego is a state of mixture of pleasure and pain, satisfaction, dissatisfaction. There is no such state as a satisfied ego. Maybe partially satisfied, but an ego that experiences infinite satisfaction, there is no such thing. So long as we remain as ego, we cannot experience the infinite satisfaction we seek. Ego is actually the obstacle that stands between us and the infinite happiness that is our real nature. So we have a choice. Do you want ego, or do you want infinite happiness?
Of course we are here because we're seeking something beyond temporary satisfaction from outside world, but we acknowledge the fact that ego is necessary in order to live in this world, and how to negotiate between this sort of self, the real awareness, and between that.
Ego is necessary to live in this world, but is it necessary to live in this world?
Āṇma-Viddai had a body, so he must have had ego.
In whose view?
Well, we saw him. We've got pictures of him.
Yes, so it's in your view.
And yours.
That's what I'm saying. Because we see ourselves as a body, we see Bhagavan as a body. But his fundamental teaching is, I am not this body. When he was asked who he is, he said, he didn't even say I. He said, Arunachala Ramana is the Paramatma, the Supreme Spirit, the ultimate self, living blissfully as awareness in the hearts of all beings. So Bhagavan doesn't take himself to be this body. Bhagavan is aware of himself as the one pure awareness which is shining in the heart of each one of us.
So if we were all like him, the world wouldn't exist?
Yes.
Right.
It's not necessary for us all to be like him. If you were like him, the world wouldn't exist. Because the world exists only in your view.
Yes. But if we were all enlightened like him,
yes,
there'd be no collective consciousness or unconsciousness. It just wouldn't exist.
Well, there would only be the one infinite consciousness.
And that's what God is wanting.
Well, that is what God is.
That is what God is.
And God is infinite love. Since God is infinite, he loves only himself, because there's nothing other than himself.
So this must be him too then?
What?
This must be him too then?
Yes. But everything is God. God is not everything. Just like the snake is a rope, but the rope is not a snake. So all this is, once Bhagavan was looking out of window beside his couch, looking at the hill, and someone asked him, Bhagavan, are you seeing God? He said, yes. Who is not seeing God? Who is ever not seeing God? There is nothing other than God to see.
So, with enlightenment, it's like nothing changes other than the perception of what everything is.
Well, yes, the perceiver loses itself in the infinite awareness. So infinite awareness alone remains.
But it could be that everything still looks. No, it couldn't be, could it?
Everything will be exactly as it is now. But we will see it differently. Bhagavan said, in some places Bhagavan said, but so long as we see the world, we cannot see what we actually are. So the jnani doesn't see the world is the implication. But in another place, Bhagavan said that both for the jnani and for the ajnani. Jnani means someone who is aware of themselves as they actually are. Ajnani means someone who's not aware. Both for the jnani and the ajnani, the world is real. Why he said that is, the jnani is seeing exactly the same as you are seeing. But whereas the jnani sees that as pure jnana, pure awareness, you see it as all these names and forms. So Bhagavan sees the same world we see it, but he doesn't see it as the world, he sees it as it is, which is just pure awareness.
And then because of our personal identification with it, then we have suffering because we're...
And Bhagavan says in another place, in verse 4 of ruḍaliduvē, he said, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. So now we're aware of ourselves as the form of this body, so we're aware of this multitude of forms that make up the world. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? That means when we don't identify ourselves with a body, we're not aware of any other forms. So the world appears as it is because of our identification with this body. Give up identification with the body, what remains is just pure awareness. Nothing has changed because even now there's only pure awareness. But instead of seeing that pure awareness as all this, we'll be seeing it as it is. If you look carefully at the snake and recognize it as a rope, nothing has changed. The rope was always a rope. What has changed is your perspective, but your perspective here means what you're seeing it as. There was always only a rope there. Previously you were seeing it as a snake, now you're seeing it as it is. Likewise, when we see ourselves as we actually are, we'll see the whole world is nothing other than ourselves. So we won't be seeing ourselves as the world, we'll be seeing ourselves as we actually are, which is just pure awareness.
So to see the ego, the sort of veil almost that the ego does to it, that's the self-inquiry.
Yes, but the thing is, the ego is like the snake. In order to see the rope, what do we have to look at? No, in the analogy, I'm not extending it. In order to see the rope, we have to look very carefully at the snake. Likewise, in order to see what we actually are, we need to look very carefully. We need to attend keenly to ego. Then we will see ego is not ego, it's only pure awareness. Just like if we look very carefully at the snake, we'll see, oh, there is no snake, there's only a rope. The rope seems to be a snake only when we don't look at it carefully enough. Likewise, we seem to be ego when we don't look at ourselves carefully enough. If we look at ourselves carefully, we'll see, oh, there's just pure awareness. Thereby ego is dissolved, and along with ego, everything else is dissolved with it. And what remains is only pure awareness, which is all that was there all the time. There never was anything else other than pure awareness. So nothing changes. Enlightenment is not an event. It's the ending of all events.
But if you see a snake, and it is a snake,
well, you run, yes. But the snake we're talking about is not actually a snake, it's only a rope. So all our fear is unnecessary, yeah.
So it's just a change of perception.
A change of perception, that's all.
In one instance, you perceive form, your perception changes, and the form disappears.
Yes.
You see reality.
But you were always seeing reality. Yes. So it is, instead of seeing reality as all these forms, you're seeing reality as reality.
Which is just formless.
Formless, yes, exactly.
Can I just ask something, if you could please clarify it, when you said that ego is the subject, and I was thinking about some old Vedantic texts like Drigdrisha Viveka, the nature of the seer and the seen. So the seer they talk about is the awareness, and but now you said ego is the subject because
okay. Often in the old Advaitic texts, they take a step-by-step approach. So they say, what is the eye? The eye meaning the eye. For the eye that sees the physical world is this physical eye. But what is the eye that sees the eye? That is the mind. What is the eye that sees the mind? That is our real nature. But actually, though it is explained like that, the ultimate seer is pure awareness, is our real nature. That doesn't mean that our real nature actually sees anything. It sees nothing other than itself. But that step-by-step approach is to get us to turn, it's a means of diverting our attention away from everything that is seen. We need to see who is the seer. So who is the seer? If we turn our attention back to see the seer, we will see that what is now seeing all this is ego. But if we look carefully at ourselves, ego will disappear. But ego seems to exist. We never actually see ego. Has anyone seen ego? We seem to be ego because of we are attending to other things. If we try to see this ego, ego will dissolve and disappear. And what will remain is just pure awareness, which is what we actually are. So that is said to be the ultimate seer. But though this is a language thing, though it is said to be the ultimate seer, it doesn't literally mean that pure awareness is seeing all this. Pure awareness sees only pure awareness. Okay. But it is pure awareness that we are seeing as all this. So in that sense, pure awareness is seeing all this. But it is not seeing all this as all this, it's seeing it as pure awareness. So the distinction is, when you're looking at a snake or a rope, if you see it as a rope and I see it as a snake, we are both seeing exactly the same thing. But whereas you see it as it actually is as a rope, I see it as a snake. So you have no fear, I have fear. So you try to reassure me and say, look at it carefully, it's not actually a snake, it's only a rope. But no, I don't want to go close to it, I'm too afraid. So, oh, no, it's very difficult to go close and see. You tell me, oh, it's very easy. Because it's not at all dangerous. Go close and see. That's what Bhagavan is telling us in this song. It's very, very easy. You just have to have the courage to go and see it.
Can I just ask one more question, which is kind of linked? Because I know you're often talking about turning for 180 degrees, and until we turn to that point, that's when we... So is it, since it's a matter of degrees, does that mean that if one is halfway through or 120 degrees, that it's also can be partial, or it's literally, it's either snake or the rope?
So long as, until we turn 180 degrees, we don't see the rope. Okay, so but closer we get to it, the more we begin to doubt. When far away from it, oh, it's definitely a snake. But when we pluck up a little courage and go a little closer, yeah, maybe it's not a snake. It still looks like snake, but maybe it's not a snake. But doubt comes. The closer we get, the more confidence we have in the words of Bhagavan, but it's only a rope. But we're still seeing it as a snake, but we're trusting his words. The closer we get, the more the confidence comes, the more trust is there. So when we're turning 180 degrees, the more we turn towards ourselves, the more other things recede into the background. When we're always looking at the world, we give reality to the world. The world seems very real because we attend to it. The more we turn our attention back to ourselves, the world seems more and more dreamlike. We're less and less convinced of the reality of the world. And we're more and more convinced of the reality of ourselves.
To carry on with that, because there are certain, the so-called satsang leaders who say that they've gone maybe not the whole 180 degrees, but they've definitely taken a step, and their experience of life is different, but that they have to still concentrate very much in order to reach that 180 degrees. So it seems that they've reach some kind of halfway landing stage or something, as far as I can make out.
Who knows what about other state? We are not interested in the state of anyone else. We are interested in our own state. And it's either we experience ourselves as we actually are, or we experience ourselves as something else.
So you don't believe that there's an in-between stage?
There's no in-between stage.
They have reached, I mean, from their own personal experience, they say that.
I don't know what they're talking about, but there is only two possibilities. Either we're aware of ourselves as we actually are, or we're aware of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. There cannot be any intermediate. So long as we're aware of ourselves as anything other than what we actually are, that is ego. It may be a very attenuated ego, it is still ego. When we see ourselves as we actually are, ego is dissolved forever. In fact, even to say ego is dissolved forever is not quite the truth. It is seen there never was any ego.
It's just that there seem to be so many of these people and they're cropping up everywhere.
Yeah, I know, but we also have to question their motives. Why if I mean, a lot of these people, they're claiming to have something that others don't have. That itself should make us suspicious.
Well, I don't know if they put it that
way. But once someone, well, yes, but they may not put it in those terms, but the implication is, once someone came to Bhagavan and said, Bhagavan, in the spiritual history of the world, your realization is unique. Bhagavan said, what is unique? What is real in me is real in you and real in everyone else. Why is anything special? So Bhagavan didn't see himself as anything special. He didn't sell himself as anything special.
Sandra has been waiting very patiently.
I just wanted to know if Ramana Maharshi knew that world is an illusion and everything is not real, and it's not a snake, it's a rope. So how come he had so much compassion for poor people, and he used to feed poor people, and he had such a compassion and love for others?
Only one thing, he saw himself, and he had infinite love for himself. We see him, because we see him as a person, we see him, this person seems to see many other people. And he had equal love for all, for the good people, the bad people, the rich people, the poor people, the animals, the snakes, the scorpions, the dogs, the monkeys. His love was equal to all because he saw only himself. He saw everything as himself.
But what about the body? Like you said, we are not the body. So we don't need food, it's the body who needs the food, ego doesn't need it, or ego identifies as a body. Yes. So how come he used to feed hungry people if he didn't feel that he himself is not a body? How could he identify others' body?
Well,
this is a question because if we see that world is illusion and the world does not exist or it's not a body, then how can we live a normal life until we identify who we are?
When we're talking about Bhagavan, now Bhagavan you're talking about is the person. the person that Bhagavan seemed to be. That person is a part of this world. So that how that person behaves in this world is according to the reality of world. Sometimes people will come to Bhagavan and they tell of calamities in their family, bereavement or whatever. Bhagavan sometimes would shed tears hearing their stories. Does that mean Bhagavan is affected? Yes and no. As the person he seemed to be, yes, he was affected. As the reality that he actually is, he's not affected by any of these things.
So how do you suggest us to live a life until we realize who we are? Because
right, okay. Who is living in this world? This body is living in the world. This body is part of the world. So how this body behaves is according to the world. So body shouldn't behave any differently, but body should behave appropriately. Body should be kind, compassionate, all these qualities. That is, the person, when I say body, I mean the person we seem to be. We should behave in this world in a kind, compassionate, caring manner. Yeah. So long as we see the world, we should, when we see others suffering, we feel that suffering as our suffering. That is natural. If we've got a compassionate heart, we can't bear to see suffering. Because we feel when we see someone else suffering, it causes us to suffer. So as a compassionate person, we should live in the world as a compassionate person. Bhagavan's teachings are not for how we should live in the world, but how we should turn away from the world back towards ourselves. So outwardly, we should live a life according to the role we have. If we're a mother, we should act as a mother. If we're a father, we should act as a father. If we're a manager in an office, we should act as a manager in the office. If we are a coolie working in the field, we should work as a coolie in the field. We have to act the role that is, but this, as a person, we have so many roles. We have work roles, we have social roles, we have family roles, we have all these roles. That person has to, what we have to do is to disidentify ourselves with this person who has all these roles. So that is the spiritual path. That's why Bhagavan never attached much importance to external renunciation. Some people say Bhagavan was against external renunciation. That is also not true. Because some people like Murugan, he had renounced his family. What Bhagavan said about external renunciation, it's all according to prarabdha. Just like marriage or not being married, that is according to prarabdha. Renunciation, external renunciation or not external renunciation, it's all according to prarabdha. That doesn't make any difference to the spiritual path. So you can renounce everything, wear orange clothes and everything, and have a big ego. That's not renunciation. Bhagavan said the real renunciation is only renunciation of ego.
So we can continue with the external life, like have a job, eat, drink, wear clothes, go out and out, but internally we have to reduce the ego, right?
The person you seem to be will be made to carry on its life as it is destined to carry on. What you need to do is to separate yourself from that person. You don't have to separate yourself from all your family and your loved ones, your friends and everything. If you separate yourself from this person, that is sufficient. Because by separating yourself from this person, you separate yourself from everything else. So what we need to renounce is only ego. If we renounce ego, we are thereby renouncing everything else. But if we try to renounce other things without renouncing ego, I have renounced so much. Great ego again. So the problem is only the ego. Identification. Well, ego is just that false identification, that wrong awareness of ourselves. Our awareness of ourselves as I am this. That is ego. Give up that and everything is given up. On the path, our ultimate aim is to give up ego, and by giving up ego, we give up everything else. We don't have to give up anything else on the path except our desires, our likes, dislikes, and so on, because they are the fuel that sustains the ego. So on the spiritual path, we are trying to give up our desires, attachments, likes, dislikes, and so on. That is the intermediate goal. That is the weaker our desires become, the closer we are to being willing to surrender the ego. But other than our desires and attachments, on the path we don't have to give up anything. By giving up our desires and attachment, we are following, that is, the path is to give up desires and attachment in order to reach the goal, which is to give up ego. But we can give up our desires and attachment only to the extent to which we separate ourselves from the person we seem to be. Separate ourselves means the attachment to this person has the, it's very difficult to say in language, but in effect we have to distance ourselves from this person. We have to see ourselves as distinct from this person. This all becomes clear. The more we practice self-investigation and self-surrender, the clearer it all becomes.
Is there a difference between the heart and soul?
Heart and soul. These words, the trouble with words is the same words are used in different sense in different contexts. In some contexts, heart means a fleshy organ in the body. In some contexts, if you say, oh, have a heart, that means compassion. Often we refer to a will as the heart. That is the collection of all our desires and everything. That's a heart. So he's got a hard heart. He's very soft-hearted. So we use heart in so many. What heart means is, generally speaking, heart means the center. So because in the body the central organ, the organ that keeps everything else going, is the heart. It pumps the body all. So that is the heart in the physical heart. Emotionally, the will is the heart, because it's the center of everything. At a deeper level, spiritually, the heart is what we actually are, our real nature. So we have to understand from the context. Often Bhagavan uses heart as a term, a synonym for our real nature. But in some cases, the Tamil term he usually uses for heart is ullam. So ullam in some contexts refers to our real nature. In some contexts he uses ullam to refer to the will or the mind. So we have to understand from the context. Likewise, soul, generally I would say soul in most contexts, soul means the ego, the jiva. But there are some people use soul to mean the supreme, what we actually are, our real nature. So we have to understand words. Whatever words you use, we have to understand them from the context. No words, I mean this is in spiritual context, but even in ordinary language, words derive their meaning from the context. The same word that means one thing in one context means something else in another context. So we have to understand from the context what the words mean. Sorry, can we pass here?
Yes. Sorry, it might be a silly question, but is the state of pure awareness similar to the state of an infant, where, you know, like infant, they don't identify their body as something separate entity, but they think the world is extension of themselves, right? So is it sort of similar state? Oh, I don't know.
Somewhat akin. That is, at the start of our bodily life, while we are infants, everything is a bit hazy. What we perceive, I mean, a newborn child doesn't see forms in the same way we see forms. It sees everything a bit hazy. It feels hunger and recognizes the mother's breast. And so slowly, it's forming its picture of the world. It is not, even the child is not in a state of pure awareness, but it's a state of, it's in a somewhat like a dreamlike state. And slowly, everything begins to solidify. Solidify, I mean, I'm using that in a metaphorical sense. Also, in a very small child, in a newborn baby, we can't tell the character, the personality. But within a few months, slowly, the personality begins to manifest. And if you see children in a kindergarten, say 3-year-old, 4-year-olds playing together, you can very clearly begin to see different personalities are there. Once someone would say, ask Bhagavan, why is it we are so attracted to children? Why do we all find children so cute and so lovable? Bhagavan said, because they haven't yet sprouted their horns. What he meant by that is, when we are born with all the vasanas, all the personality traits, all the desires and everything from our previous births, but they don't immediately manifest. That's what Bhagavan meant, they haven't yet sprouted their horns. So even very wicked people, like someone like Hitler or Stalin, when they were small baby men, must have been very cute.
Along with that lines, everything predestined, everything is all set on us.
Everything that we are to experience in our life is predestined. But we have a will which is not bound by destiny. That is, it may be your destiny, just for example, supposing it's your destiny to say, it's your destiny to be a professor in a university. In order to be a professor in a university nowadays, you need a PhD. So you need to study, you need to first get a bachelor's degree, then a master's degree, then a PhD. So because it's your destiny to be a to be a professor, you will be made to do all the actions that are necessary to study the undergraduate and then the postgraduate and then the doctoral, all that you will be made to do according to your destiny. But quite likely as a child, you thought, I want nothing else than to be a professor. So you had that desire to be a professor. So though it was your destiny to do all those, to study all that and become a professor, you had that desire, but your actions, all your studying was driven by your destiny. At the same time, it's driven by your will, because you want to be a professor. Other people may not particularly want to be a professor. Some children say, I want to be a fireman or something, and they end up as a prime minister. So, I mean, we don't always know what we're going to be. But some actions we are made to do just by destiny. Some actions we are made to do by destiny and by our will. Some actions it's only our will that is driving them. But though we can do actions driven by our will, those actions will not fructify. They will not. I can decide. I want to work hard and achieve such and such. I want to say become rich. I want £1 million. So I make all sorts of effort to try and earn money. But I engage in business, but I'm always unlucky. I keep on earning a little. I get 100,000 and then I invest it in something and I lose it all. So because it's not my destiny to ever become a millionaire, though I have so much desire and I make so much effort, it doesn't fructify. So what we are to experience is according to destiny. The actions that are necessary in order to experience that destiny will make us do those actions. But while we are experiencing our destiny, we want so much more than what we're destined to experience. And so many things that we're destined to experience we don't want. So our will is constantly interfering. We are trying to minimize the unpleasant things and to maximize the pleasant things. We can't actually change what we are destined to experience. What we are destined to experience, we cannot experience anything that we are not destined to experience. We cannot avoid experiencing anything that we are destined to experience. But we can want to change it, and we can try to change it. So all that we are to experience is destined, but that doesn't mean all our actions are destined. Because some of our actions are driven by, it's only because of our will, because of our desire. But if any action produces a result, I like cream cakes, and I've heard there's a cream cake shop down the road on the other side. So I'm very eager to go and eat cream cakes. And in my eagerness to go and buy some cream cakes, I cross over the road and I am hit by a car. It was, to be hit by the car was my destiny. So my destiny made me cross the road at that point. My desire also happens at that time to be, so they're so interwoven, the way, because the actions of our body, speech and mind are being driven by two forces. One is destiny, one is our will. So we cannot often they're working they're both going in the same direction. It's my destiny to be hit by that car, and my desire to eat cream cake is also playing its role. But ultimately, even if I had no desire to eat cream cake, I would have crossed the road at that point anyway, for some other reason. So we can say, but everything that we experience, everything that we are to experience in this life is predestined, but not all our actions are predestined. And our desires are not predestined. The desires, the likes, the dislikes, that's entirely in our hands. So destiny, we can give up our desires. Destiny cannot make us desire anything.
So gradually, do we need to surrender our actions and
yeah, no, only our will. We cannot change what is destined. We can change our will. So what we need to do is to give up our likes and dislikes, our desires, our attachments, our hopes, our fears, all these things. If we give up these, then all our actions will be driven, then the will isn't interfering at all. So all the actions will then be according to destiny. So the root of all, the problem is our will. Of course, that's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is ego. But ego has a will. So long as ego has a will, it's not willing to surrender itself. So we need to as much as possible, we need to give up our will, give up our likes, our dislikes, our desires, our attachments, our hopes, our fears, everything. We need to, thy will be done. We need to surrender our will to the will of God. We need to accept that whatever happens in our life is happening by his sweet will for our good. If we understand that God has infinite love for us, God is our own self. So God loves us as himself. So God's love for us is infinite. If we trust God, we can leave everything to him. So we don't have to have any desires or likes or dislikes of our own. Surrender our whole will to God. That is our aim. But we cannot surrender our will entirely without surrendering ego. Because so long as we rise as ego, we cannot totally avoid having likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. So the surrender of our will is our aim, but that we can achieve that surrender of will, complete surrender of will, only by surrendering ego.
Michael, a quick one. Coming back to this 180 degrees, yes. It means I'm looking at myself. Yes. Once I glimpse that, ego is dead. Is that right? Yes. Right, okay. That's it.
It's not a glimpse. Really? Because you're swallowed by that. glimpse sounds very, but yes, okay, we can put it this way. By glimpsing it, you're swallowed by it.
Right, so it's just finding the way through, and then once I spot it.
That's it. You're finished. but Bhagavan says very beautifully in Ulladu Unadal Khan, becoming food is seeing.
Right.
So we truly see what we actually are only when we are swallowed by that.
Once I spot it.
Yes, once you spot it, you are swallowed by that. And that it is yourself.
Yes.
Pure awareness. So we have to swallow ourselves. And when we swallow ourselves, we ourselves alone remain.
Right.
Yes.
I can't function as a person.
Well, you don't need to function anymore. Yeah, there is no person to function. You don't become Bhagavan, you remain as Bhagavan. You're already Bhagavan. Yes. Which you already are.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the world around us, Maya being an appearance, and the comment earlier when Bhagavan saw the world outside the mountain, he said everything is God.
Bhagavan, yes, it's two completely different views. As I was saying, if you see, there's a rope here. One person sees it as a snake, one person sees it as a rope. Both are seeing exactly the same thing. So Bhagavan is seeing exactly the same that we're seeing. But whereas we are seeing it as all these forms, Bhagavan is seeing it as himself, which is one formless, infinite awareness. But it's the same thing. It's just he is perceiving it as it is, we are misperceiving it. Why is he perceiving it as it is? Because he is it. We are misperceiving it because we seem to have separated ourselves by limiting ourselves as this person. So it is the rising of ego that distorts our perception. So an illusion is just a misperception. You're seeing something as something other than what it actually is. That is why there is no snake there. Though it seems to be a snake, there is actually no snake there. The snake is totally non-existent. That's why Bhagavan said, I don't know if anyone else has pointed this out before Bhagavan, but Bhagavan, in Sanskrit, ma is a negative, and ya is the feminine form of what. So Bhagavan said, Maya is ya ma, what is not, or she who is not. So Maya denotes non-existent, what doesn't actually exist, but what seems to exist. But it seems to exist only in the view of ego. So without ego, there is no Maya, which is why Bhagavan often referred to Maya. He often used the term mōṇamē, which is the mind Maya. The mind itself is Maya. Mind there means ego.
There's one question, link to it. So when Krishna says to Arjuna that this world, in the Bhagavad Gita, this world is the illusion, and so in the battle to come, it is the destiny, and in a way you're going to the soldier, which is Arjuna, that you will slay your kinsman, but it is all an appearance. On one hand, and on the other hand, Bhagavan being very compassionate to the people around him. They're the same. How do you reconcile those?
The thing about the Bhagavad Gita is it has teachings at many different levels. So it is a text designed to to suit a wide range of spiritual aspirants. So there's a message for everyone in Gita. So everyone takes from Gita what is suitable for them. It's a wonderful text, Gita, because it covers so much and it's got so much. So one of the messages of Gita is that we each have what is called swadharma, our own duty. That is according to the role we play in life. So, but what is called swadharma in that context, in the context of Gita, is the role that we as a person have. So, because Arjuna was born in a family, in a Kshatriya family, that's a family of kings, he had, as a king, he has certain duties, certain responsibilities. And sometimes kings have to fight for righteous causes. So that is the swadharma of the person. Bhagavan gave a different meaning to swadharma. He says swa means oneself. So your swadharma, the swadharma of your body and mind may be to be a clerk in an office, to be a father, to be a school teacher, be this or that. We have so many roles we have. Or to be secretary of your local football club or whatever it is. Those are the swadharma of the person. But your swadharma is to be as you are. Because you are not the person you seem to be.
Thank you.
I think we'll have to stop there. It's too time.